Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of the Zero Budget Podcast. I am your host, Juptej Singh. With me, not with me as always, but with me here today is our wonderful guest, the wickedly talented, the always sensational Shishki Productions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course, man. What's going on? How's it going? Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Zero Budget Pod. Really appreciate my brother Juptej for bringing me on today, man. Thank you.
Of course. Am I saying that right? Shishki Productions?
Yeah, you got it. Surprisingly.
What does Shishki mean?
Yeah, man. So I get this question a lot, actually, which isn't something I envisioned when I started out. Probably would have named it something more common. But, Shishki is actually a word that my mom came up with. Like growing up, so I'm 27, right? And like growing up, my mom, whenever she saw something that I did, or anybody in the house for that matter did, that was sort of lacking quality, right? Like MAGT, like something that's like not doesn't have that sort of distinct quality to it. She'd be like, oh, that's Shishki, like if it was like a house, right? Like let's say we go to somebody's house and like, like the door is like, kind of made out of cheap wood or whatever, it happens, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, it should be like, well, that's Shishki, and all that stuff. So, I just, when I started out with this this IG venture, I was like, I got to name it something that's like ironic, kind of funny, right? It kind of has that unique like flavor to it that, people who follow Shishki will know after a while. And so this kind of fit that mold. So Shishki means like lacking quality. But I guess it's funny because, I try to make the animations as high quality as possible, so a little bit ironic there.
Yeah, kind of full circle in a way, like kind of ties in,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So everyone, you know how we start these things off. I ask the same question every single time. Shishki, how was your week?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good, right? Like I was just talking to a buddy of mine and telling him, like, when I started Shishki on IG, back in February of this year, it was something I did on the side, right? And like more and more through the summer, and now obviously into August, it's turned into something that consumes my week. So to answer your question, I've just been working on the latest animation, going through the process, right, of voice recording, animating, all that good stuff. And so it's been good. It's been busy. It's been hot. I'm out in California, so you got the wildfires going on and all that stuff. So shouts out and prayers to all the people going through that. But I've been safe. I've been sound, and my family's doing all right. So, but other than that, yeah, the week's been good.
Good to hear. I've heard the weather's been like absolutely insane in Cali the past few weeks.
Dude, it's been so out of whack, right? Like everybody's like, oh yeah, California, like, oh, it's the best weather out there, right? Like, oh, you guys living the life. And because of that, like the price hikes on houses out here is like absolutely ridiculous. And not only just houses, it's like, dude, you go to the grocery store, you try to buy a candy, it's like legit like $7-8 for like, and it's not even king size. Like, come on, man. Like, least you can do is give me a king size for $8, man. But legitimately, like prices out here are ridiculous. But it's mainly due to the weather, right? Because everybody wants to live out here. It's nice weather. It's a good living. But yeah, like you said, man, like the past couple of weeks, it's been bad. I want to say it's been like a month now where it's like this heat wave that's been rolling through. It's like, up in the Bay Area and Little Inland, actually, is a town called Stockton. Some people may be familiar with it. It's sort of inland, so it gets super hot. It's like 107 there for like a straight week, and so the fires are not unexpected for sure. I'm like a lot of people knew they were going to happen, but it's crazy how we're not prepared for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, the weather here in Virginia has been like pretty rough too. I mean, not as rough as wildfires to be fair.
Yeah,
But
right.
I mean, yesterday, just last night, the entire day it was storming horribly,
Oh
and
man.
and like my street was like starting to flood, and now
Oh jeez.
it's extremely hot. It's like a
Oh
hundred
man.
hundred something degrees outside. So it's, I mean,
Yeah,
climate change, I guess. I don't-
yeah, yeah. Climate change, featuring 2020, right? Like
yeah,
that's the collab that we're faced with,
yeah.
this
We can
summer.
add that to the list.
I know, man, and it's like you guys have that humidity out there too. Like I gotta say, dude, like that is to me, I would live through anything, but like in terms of weather, but like humidity is, I just can't deal with it.
Humidity
Like you,
sucks.
oh my goodness, it's so bad. Like you step outside and it feels like you're literally in a steam room.
Yeah.
And geez, yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough. I feel for you.
Yeah. Well, my week's been pretty okay. We filmed our last episode on, I think, Thursday or Friday, and that one was like super depressing for us. So since then, I've just tried to kind of lay low and not keep up with the news. But the news
Yeah,
has been so wild that it's not really possible. So,
yeah,
um, I mean, I've just kind of been at home doing my thing, hanging out. Nothing much going on in my world. I'm pretty okay. So my week's been
yeah.
good.
Well, that's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
that's you don't hear that often nowadays, right? Something's always happening. So
Yeah.
to hear that your
Yeah,
week's
that's
kind
true.
of been, yeah. So
I
that's
guess
good to
nothing
know.
happening is like a good. It's a solid baseline.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good thing in today's world.
yeah. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? What do you do? Who are you? Who is Shishki Productions?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So first, I just want to say, like, thanks for having me on this podcast,
Of
man.
course.
It means the world. Like, uh, it's to know that somebody wants you on and wants you to answer questions, literally just about my life and what I'm doing, like that's humbling, right? So I appreciate that for sure. Who I am, so my name is Sahib. Yeah, a lot of people may or may not know that, but yeah, that's my name. My name is Sahib. I was born and raised in Hayward, California. Grew up there. Yeah, dude, that's the other thing, right? Like a lot of people, I've been getting messages, throughout the last couple of months. Like they ask me like, oh, can we come visit you, in Punjab, right? Or like they assume
Punjab?
that I'm,
What?
yeah, yeah, bro. Like they assume that I'm, located, somewhere out in Punjab. I guess like my Punjabi that like the dialect that I have is like a Majha dialect.
Uh-huh.
So people I don't know. I like people assume that I'm based out in Punjab or whatever, which to me, like, I'm like, okay, like if that's kind of what you think, and that means I must be doing a good job
Yeah.
speaking Punjabi, so I'll take that as a compliment. But yeah, so yeah, I bring that up only to say, like, I was born and raised in California. Uh, you know, grew up, went to high school, everything, and so my siblings are actually very, very successful. They're both older than me, and my brother, he's an orthopedic surgeon, right? So he went the medical route and is incredibly successful, super hardworking, great at everything he does. And my sister, out of high school, she went to Harvard, and did went on to go do amazing things, right? Like today, she manages tons of schools in the Bay Area, and is like the director of schools out in that it's
Oh
like
wow.
17, 18 schools that she manages, under her. So a lot of people, like, it's funny, 'cause I tell Punjabi people, what she does, and they're like, they hear me say like, oh yeah, she's the director of schools, and they're like, "Acha, wo principal ya?" And it's like no, 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 like, not to discount what principals do. Like, being a principal is great, but like she's like a lot of tiers above,
Yeah.
principal. Like she legitimately manages, top down, like a bunch of schools. So anyways, like both of my siblings super successful, right? And I'm 6 years younger than my sister. I'm 8 years younger than my brother. And so when it came time for me to go to college, right, like the expectations were on, right? They were laid on heavy, and they were laid on thick, right? Like my parents and the community at large, like, you're like he's the smart one, and he's gonna do great things. and I didn't. Like my grades in high school weren't great.
Felt
I
that.
went to yeah, yeah, right, yeah. It's yeah. I mean, but at the time, right? It's funny. Like when your grades aren't good in, what at whatever phase in your life, you kind of feel like you're the only one in that position. It's like, oh no, but this other person has all this other stuff working for them, right? And it's like, no, there are a lot of other people that are in the same boat. It's just tough to see that at the time. But so I like, yeah, I like kind of bumbled my way, through high school and enter college. I kind of the same process, right? Where it was like, okay, well, my parents looking at me and friends and family are looking at me like, okay, well, you can now turn the ship around and be somebody successful like your siblings, right? And like these other people. And if I'm being honest with you, man, I just didn't know. Like at the time, like I knew I had this like creative drive inside me, but I wasn't, it wasn't something that I wanted to quote unquote unleash, just because if it was too risky, right? It
Mm,
felt like something that was unstable, wasn't gonna lead to any opportunities anywhere, right? So
mm,
you have kind of all these vague thoughts running through your head. And so anyways, you fast forward and in college, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do medicine, maybe I'll do law, man, just kind of bumbling my way through. So after that, man, like, I was like, yeah, like I can do this stuff, but at the same time, if I can work and like with the resources we have in the world today, right? Like YouTube, right? All these like tutorials, right? All these articles online, like the internet is essentially a university if you want it to be, right?
yeah.
So I just use all the resources online and kind of self-taught myself how to animate, right? Like I was like, this is something I can do because before animation, man, like I wanted to direct and like act and all that good stuff, right? Like the sort of the glitz and glam field or version of the creative field, right?
Yeah.
And like the issue that I ran into consistently is the people around me were like, yeah, I can't get involved in this because my bapu's gonna beat my butt, right? Like, I can't get involved in this because I don't know what to tell my family. Or like, oh, video daya, right? Like, so I consistently ran into this issue of like, okay, nobody wants to be a part of this. It's not because they don't love me or they don't care about me. It's because they're afraid of getting their ass beat, right?
Yeah.
So, so I was like, okay, what's something I can do that that doesn't require, you know, physical, or people to be there physically, right? Or people to be with me and support me physically. So, animation was a good field, I thought, right? And I went ahead and just kind of self-taught myself, how to animate, what to do, from the beginning to the end, right? Like, I'm talking everything from how to open the program to the pieces I create today. So
Mm,
it was good. So I guess that's like a long-winded answer to who I am, I
yeah.
guess.
Going back to the thing of they don't have to physically be there, right? So
Right.
you started before all this like COVID mess, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I started back in 2016 is when I first started looking into late 2015. I want to say is when I first started looking into how to animation and the medium of animation and what to do um with with just software in general, right? Like what are the limits and capabilities of 3D animation in today's world?
Mm. And did you like what was the journey like from okay, now I'm starting to learn animation and hey, animation's kind of cool to I'm going to make something of this to, I want to
Yeah,
make this sort of like production company basically.
right, yeah, no, great question. So I like, yeah, in 2016 I started, right, and I was like, okay, like let me go ahead and try to learn the basics, right? And at the time I wasn't expecting animation to be what it is today, right? Obviously, for me. And yeah, I worked slowly, chipped away, kind of created a character first, right? figuring out the basics, figuring out the process. And then come late 2018 is when I sat down, and I want to say that was it was a year that I had taken off after graduating from college. And I sat down and I said, okay, this is something, if I really put my mind to it, I can I can do well, and it can make a difference, right? Um, and so I sat down and I said, you know what? No matter how crappy it looks, no matter how shitty it looks, like I'm just gonna come out with an animation and see what happens, right? See what kind of response I get. So just a qualifier to this portion of what I'm doing though is um, I never had, or I wasn't that involved in social media, right? Like I didn't have like an IG, I didn't have Twitter or Facebook. I had, but I just never used. So all that stuff, right? So I finished my animation in 2018, the first one, which was America. Actually, I released it. I want to say like
Oh,
third on
really?
IG.
Yeah.
Yeah, America is the first animation that I made. Um, and it was like 3 minutes long. It took me about 2 months to make, um, because I ran into a ton of issues, right? Trying to figure things out. Um, and that's the other thing, right? Like if I should just take like a quick like tangent road real quick, like when you're animating or doing any of this sort of creative stuff, and I'm sure you run into this issue too with podcasts and whatnot, is when you run into an issue, right? Like for me, for example, I would just talk very concretely about an issue I ran into. Like the kid Hira, right? His bug, it's a white bug, and no character before that had ever had a bug, right? So for me to animate a character with a bug on, I couldn't. There was no tutorial that I
Yeah.
I could use, right? Like there was no like I was the guy, kind of paving that path of 3D animation, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, now in the future, if somebody wants to create a model with a bug, like this is how you do it, right? So that is why I think a lot of times, like trying to pioneer or kind of pave the path in a certain niche area is very like difficult because
Yeah.
there are no tutorials, there are no people that you can follow and say like, yeah, you can use a bunch of resources, but at the end of the day, you're the one kind of creating the piece. But anyway, so it took me about 2 months to create the first animation, and I like when I was done, I was ecstatic, right? I was like, oh my god, like I'm done. This is gonna blow up. It's gonna be amazing. Like I'm king of the world. Like मेरे अर्गा और कोई है नहीं गा, right? But but I quickly realized like, yo, creating and distributing are two separate talents. Like
100%.
you can't just be great at creating and have zero distribution and expect your work to reach every corner of the earth. And that's not to say like I don't want to make it seem like, oh, I think my work is great or anything, but of course like there's an inherent level of confidence that you have in your
Yeah.
work when you create it, right? Because if you don't, then you wouldn't create it in the first place because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, this isn't that good.
Totally.
But so I quickly realized, right? Like I think it was like November of 2018. I was like, like I've been done with this project for about a month now, and nobody knows it exists. Nobody cares, and this is terrible. I've wasted the last like 2 years of my life trying to work on this, and I thought it was gonna be the next big thing, and it's not, right? And that was my immaturity, right? Like
Hmm.
I have no problem in saying that because you learn as you grow that things aren't just gonna come your way. Like you have to work for every inch that you get in life. So fortunately, there's a film festival down in the Los Angeles area out here in California, and it's called Sick Lens. And
Hmm. Yeah.
I used
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
to the LA Gurdwara a lot during that time period, and I ran into this uncle who actually organized the festival, and he reached out and he said, because I had told him that I did animation, and he was like, well, if you have something that you want to present, we can show it here at this festival. Bicky Uncle. So in case anybody from LA is listening,
Shout out
or
to
if
Bicky
Bicky Uncle
Uncle.
himself, shout out to Bicky Uncle, most deaf dude. He's an OG, definitely for Shishki P. But so he came through and he allowed me to put up my animation in at the Sick Lens Film Festival, and it was nice. Like I had like what, like 4 people watch it, which is what one a ton of people, but it gives you that motivation, it gives you that energy to that drive to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And so I took about a year off. During that year, I was actually had applied for my master's, and uh, I was in school getting my master's in public policy. So so I did that, and then late 2019, towards the tail end of my master's program, I was like, yeah, like I'm not feeling it. I'm really not feeling this. Like I've spent a ton of time on this, and it's just not working for me. So come February of 2020, this year, is when the CSYA, California Sikh Youth Alliance,
Mhm.
they organized uh, was it a powerlifting competition up at Fremont Gurdwara in California. And I actually knew one of the guys who was on the board for CSYA, and I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, like, look, I do animation and I can make you guys a little animated piece, if you're cool with that, and if you can advertise it for me, that'd be great." I had no plans at that point, honestly, to continue with my animated work. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this is just something I'm gonna do on the side. It's a talent or slash skill that I have. But the response to that piece of animation that I put out, and that's actually the first one I put out on IG, the powerlifting
Yeah.
one, where he does trying to weightlift, and his dad's like, karta kamta chakkeni janda or whatever. But that was the first time that I truly felt like, you know what, this isn't something that's just a hobby or something to do on the side. Like if I really kind of grind and work towards building the distribution aspect of things, I can take this somewhere, and if people like it, great. If not, then at least I know that I've tried and put in, an honest effort.
Yeah.
So for sure, so shout out to CSYA as well for giving me that opportunity to kind of make that animation. It's funny because I showed up and it's at the powerlifting competition. Obviously, it's at the Gurdwara, so a bunch of uncles and things like that. These uncles are coming up to me. They're like, अच्छा तू cartoon बनाना it's like and like coming back to that original point that I was making about how my sister graduated from Harvard, manages all these schools in the Bay Area, is super successful, right? My brother, orthopedic surgeon, and like they're looking at me, they're like, "Actually, tu cartoon बनाना,"
Yeah.
for me it was just one of those moments where I was like, "Oh God," like and I'm sure right, like
Oh,
you're like the
100%, dude.
the judgment that's
100%.
passed off by like upbringing is so real, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like, it's not a lot of times. It's not even something that they say. It's more of just like it's it's the way they say it. It's
Yeah.
like they just kind of furrow the brows a little bit, like अच्छा अच्छा cartoon बनाना अच्छा चलो कुछ कर ली जिंदगी च फिर है ना, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what are you like, that is what I'm doing, bro, like cartoon brony is not easy money,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not easy work. So I
Yeah, dude,
yeah, so
100%. Like, my sister is, she was like the first one out of all of, like, I guess, like the kids in our family to graduate high school. She's in
right,
dentist school. My other cousin is in dentist school. One of my cousins in business school and stuff. And then
right.
like my mom may will come up to me at like some family gathering and they're like, "Tu ki karda?" I'm like, "मैं theater च major karda." They're like, "अच्छा, फिल्मां बनानी है?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, man, and like that's the other thing, right? Is like you just hit it with that response. Is it's so hard to give a confident response because you yourself are trained to believe that what you're doing is not valuable,
Yeah.
right? Like you're like, yeah, yeah, Hanji, like I don't know, and it's like
Yeah.
you give that unsure response, and then the next sort of button that they smash is like, oh, munda lazy, right? Or like,
Exactly. Yeah.
like
Because
it's like, oh,
it's the thing about like entertainment, like anything in the arts, really, where like we're trained to believe like it's so incredibly unstable and you're just going in because you're like some starry-eyed kid, but then once
Right.
you get to like the quote unquote real world, it's a lot harder and you have to buckle down. So like
Yeah.
when we see somebody actually like going towards that path, it's a little like it's rockier, you know?
Right.
At least it seems
Right.
that way.
No, 100%, 100%. I tell a lot of so I've like younger cousins and family friends that will ask me for advice on like, oh, what do I, and like what I tell them is I'm like, look, the fact of the matter is, like we're being real on the podcast, right?
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
can be real. Okay.
100%.
So right, okay. So like when gore kids are trying to trying to make it to Hollywood or whatever, right? Like, or trying to make it in the arts, like typically, not always, but typically they're fighting the pressure of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
When Apane are trying to make it, right, or Asian or just kind of just brown people in general, right, are trying to make it into Hollywood, we're not only fighting the pressure of Hollywood, dude, we're fighting our apne karde. Like, we're
Yeah.
fighting mom, we're fighting dad, we're fighting siblings, we're fighting the community at large, right? We're fighting the pai at the gurdwara who's
Hmm.
sitting in the corner looking at you like, yo,
Yeah.
ko hor kar lenda zindagi. Like all that stuff builds up, right? And it's this for a lot of people, unfortunately, it's like this insurmountable like pressure, right, that you can't overcome. And so it's like, you know what, I just became an accountant, right,
Yeah.
or I just became for me it would have been a political analyst, right? And it's like, but that's not what your calling is, right? That's
Mhm.
and it's unfortunate because our community has this like built-in sort of just harsh filter that unfairly judges and criticizes. So yeah, so I don't know why I went on that little mini rant, but yeah, so I
No.
think it's just harder. So shout out to you, man, for putting in work in your field
Hey, we're doing our
and
best out here. We're doing our best.
yeah.
When you talk about your calling, though, like, especially in relation to like animation and Shishki Productions, were you always sort of? You said you always had this sort of creative drive. Did that ever like manifest itself in any other ways than animation, like throughout the years? And then how did you finally? How did you finally like discover animation and then go? This is what I need to do.
Yeah, no, great question. So I like, yeah, just growing up, man. Like, I want to say I was like 7, 8. I think super young, and I was out in the Bay Area, right? Born and raised there. And then my there was like this pamphlet I think that showed up at the house, and it was like kids on camera, right? It was like for like kids on camera, and I'm looking back at it, I'm sure it was like, oh, pay like in an absorbent amount of
Yeah.
money, and like and your kid can be on screen. And my dad like showed me this pamphlet and was like, "Oh yeah, like tu ta ban sakda, tu ta actor ban sakda." Like, you have that sort of quality, right? Because I used to be a pretty good like imitator, right? Like, I like if there was like a pai doing katha, like I would predict it, or not predict, but like I would copy his mannerisms at home, right? And be like, "Oh, this kind of what he does is what he looks like," all that kind of stuff. So like, I just kind of had that like sort of entertainment flair, I guess you can say. And my dad was like, yo, like you can end up as a kid on camera, like we can totally turn you into an actor. And I was like, yo, dude, I'm about this. And it's funny because he didn't do it, like he didn't send me to the program or whatever, the shoot or whatever you want to call it. And looking back, like, we have conversations even to this day, and he said the reason why he didn't want to send me uh, to that shoot was he felt that if I ended up getting involved in like the entertainment slash film world, that I would have lost my Sikhi, right? And like,
Yeah.
to him, that's super important, right? And obviously to me as well. But I looking back, I want to say that that was just a little bit misguided, right? Like,
Hmm.
we could have worked around that, and who knows, right? But anyways, like, that was, I think, the moment, and from then on, that kind of seed was planted, and I said, this is something that I want to do. Like, this is something that I want to work towards. And a lot of times, like, through high school, I tried to make films, and I self-taught myself how to video edit, and ended up editing short films for other folks, and so all that, like, it's manifested itself in different forms, but never has it been a complete production or kind of me where it's like, I'm going to take this project from beginning to end, finish it, put it out there, and have my name slapped on it and say, like, look, this is what I'm doing. Because honestly, it's that pressure, right? Of like,
Yeah.
if I say, like, this is what I'm doing, then people will be like, okay, well, that means he's not doing anything else with his life. Like, this is what he's gonna do, and it's not gonna be that successful, right? Because you know how operating are, they're very quick to shut
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
stuff down. So yeah. So I guess that's sort of where the roots and manifestation
Hmm.
happened.
Going back, I thought it was really interesting the thing you mentioned about what your dad said, because I remember having like a very similar conversation with my dad once I started doing like theater and going into filmmaking, where he was just like, yeah, like God, like Jovi karna kar, but like val nikatane and all this sort of stuff. And I like, it's interesting that that's like a concern that sort of resonates, you know, like we can draw parallels there. So do you think that's like a real I guess, issue? Because even if you look at some of the larger creators, this is kind of like a really long question, sorry. But
No, you're fine.
if you
Yeah.
look at some of the larger creators that have, you know, made it without naming any names, but their biggest
Right.
criticism is that they've sort of dropped their community, right? Or they've
Right.
dropped their roots. So
Right.
do you think that that is a real concern for people that are going into the arts from our community?
Yeah. Yeah. No, great question. If I'm being honest with you, yeah, I look back at that conversation with my dad and I say, like, man, I really wish you had put me on camera, but I'm not upset, and I completely understand where that concern came from because it was legitimate and it's valid, right? Like, what sort of quote unquote big celebrity do we see out there today from our community that, yeah, has kind of held on to those roots, right? Whether the roots being uh, Sikhi, or being, connected with your Punjabi culture, or whatever it may be, right? To each individual, the roots are different, but you don't see a lot of that. So I totally see where he was coming from, and I think, to your point, right? Like, it is a concern from that generation, right? Like, we fought to keep our Sikhi alive. We came out here to kind of give our kids a better life, and we want you guys to continue that fight, right? And we
Yeah.
want you to continue to represent us with quote unquote the proper image on the world stage. And I see that, but on the flip side, the concern coming from our generation, right, is if we're not given an opportunity to shine on the entertainment stage,
Hmm.
because I'm a firm believer in what you see on TV is what the next generation grows
Definitely.
up to admire and idolize, right?
Definitely.
So if you're not gonna see our people on TV and on screen, then, you know yeah, maybe we can keep it alive for this generation, but the chances that it's going to continue for the next generation and the generation after that are not going to be that high. If you're just fighting for, like, this image, and kind of, don't go into the entertainments, just keep your Sikhi strong and keep your Punjabi culture strong, and so I think, like, for me, I always kind of had to kind of battle between those two, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, like, I do have to be true to who I am, but also I have to represent a culture and a religion in a fashion and way that uh, kids around the world who watch these animations, right? For me specifically, animation, who watch these animations can say, you know what, like, yeah, I'm a Sikh, yeah, I'm Punjabi. I want to grow up and be like this kid. I want to be grow up and be a part of this sort of family, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a fine balance to kind of create a product that allows both sides of that coin to come together and say, yeah, like, you are also representing the culture, the religion, but you're also giving the new generation a voice. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and I've seen that in some of your videos too, where it's like, yeah, some of them are just like skits, but then you have that one where you tackle like colorism within the community, and
Right.
like it's yeah, these are humorous, funny situations, but then at the core of it, there's like a real message. So
Right.
how important is it that you keep that pervasive throughout your content?
Yeah, absolutely. So important. So important. Now, honestly, I think that's something that's if I to the point. It's so important to the point where if I don't come up with a script that I feel uh, delivers some sort of message, however subtle, I'll delay the project and I won't release a video. Right, like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
content creators. Not to throw any shade on any artists on IG or wherever, but. Uh, every artist feels the pressure to release content, right? Like, well, once you have one episode out, it's like, oh, when's the next one coming? When's that? You're only as good as your next project. Is a phrase that I've heard a lot and something that I truly believe. But the fact of the matter is, you feel that pressure to create more content, and then you start slacking on the quality. You start cutting corners, right? You start cutting on okay, well, maybe this one doesn't need to have a message, right? Maybe this one can have a message and it can be, do what you want to do, right? And it's like you start building these bridges in your mind that aren't necessarily there. And so I think it's incredibly important to me to come up with scripts, right? Because it starts with a script. Uh, every project does, right? And it's important that every script be sound in its storytelling form as well as as well as the message that I want to convey, right? Whatever message that may be. So with the colorism one, for example, the Fair and Lovely one, right? It was something where it was a concern that had been uh, at the forefront of a lot of family friends' minds, right? And
Yeah.
they brought it up, and I said, you know what, like this is something that I can totally weave into a story, right? And I guess the other challenge is like the skits are a minute long, and we can dive into that in a little bit, but trying to weave that story into a minute and have a message. It needs to pack a punch, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, it's incredibly important to have a message.
Yeah. So with that, what would you say your creative process looks like, and especially with like integrating that message? Is it like, here's something I want to talk about, let me make something about it, and then how do you go about actually making it? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's $1 million question. That's why I'm not gonna answer it. No, no, no. I'm just messing. I'm just, I'm just messing. No, so the process honestly is, and I'm gonna be as transparent as possible. It's the idea will sometimes pop up while I'm driving, right? Like, oh, maybe I can do a skit about this, right? Or it'll be a conversation I'm having with somebody, and it's like, oh, maybe I can do an idea about this, right? So that is the formation of the idea. The idea is formed on like day one, right,
Mm-hmm.
of this process. If we're starting that timeline there, and then on like day three, I'll step aside and not think about it at all for day two, right, or day three or whatever. And then whenever that sort of energy hits me again, or that creative inspiration hits me again, whether it be day three or four, usually takes like a day, 2 days. Um, I'll say, okay, let me sit down and let me give myself that little push of sitting behind a computer and writing out a script, right? So writing a script isn't just putting a bunch of words together, right? It's having a beginning, middle, end. There are a lot of like different tactical and strategic
Yeah.
techniques that you can use and should use to write a script. Um, and so I have this script writing software. It's called Final Draft. For any aspiring writers out there, I would
Yeah. I've
definitely.
used that. Final Draft is really good.
Yeah, yeah. Final Draft is amazing. It kind of formats the script perfectly for you. So any aspiring writers, check it out. Final Draft. Um, so I use Final Draft and I sit behind the computer and I say, okay, all right, like let's do this, right? Like let me just write out what I want this story to be, or what this story could potentially be. For the Fair and Lovely one, for example, I had the idea, right? Talked to a couple people, and it was like, yeah, well, maybe we can do a skit about Fair and Lovely. Okay, well, what about Fair and Lovely, right? Oh, well, maybe it's this idea because to be honest, like guys in our community have it easy. Like if we're being real, right? Like
100%.
we got it
Yeah.
easy, and a lot of times we don't realize this, and I didn't realize this for a long time, but we have it easy. Like the Kurdiyan that grow up in Punjabi households, man, like they have it rough. Like they're taught to, you know, try to look as pretty as possible, not gain any weight. You know, quote unquote. Like when I say pretty, it's like quote unquote pretty, right? Like according to Western standards, like, and it's like, you know, don't gain any weight, right? Like don't, and to the point of Fair and Lovely, like don't, your skin shouldn't be too dark, and it's like all of these standards. Number one, they're ridiculous. Like they should not be in place. But number two, you're essentially trying to create this person. You're trying to mold this human being into a person that they're just not, and the mental damage that I feel like it does on a lot of women in our community, especially, is irreparable. But
Yeah.
anyways, so you know, just going back to that Fair and Lovely idea, like, yeah, like I thought about it and I was like, okay, so sit down behind the computer and it's like Fair and Lovely. Uh, maybe it's you know, a mom trying to push Fair and Lovely onto the daughter, right? That's the general concept, right? And then you start writing it out, and like the first draft of the script on day 4 is so bad, and it's something that I would never put out, like just because it's so bad. But come day 5, 6, and so I put it aside for another day or two, and then come back to it around day 6, and then at that point it's really sort of like sharpening, polishing, cleaning up the script and adding lines that I think will be funny and also deliver the message, right? So what I do is at the end, I send the script out. I send it out to 4 or 5 different people every time, and I say, hey, what do you think of this script? What do you think the message is? What lines did you find funny, right? And so that's a process. That's like around day 7, day 8, right? And I'll get that feedback, and incorporate any notes. You know, if somebody's like, "Oh, you know, I didn't really find this funny," and it's important, right? Like this is another thing that I'll tell other aspiring creative artists. You know, whether it be script writers, you know, actors, whatever, because everybody can benefit from this piece of advice that I received from one of my professors actually. And that advice is, when you're getting criticism, you have to find this fine balance of accepting criticism but also being confident in your work, right?
Definitely.
Like
Definitely.
there is a very fine balance there, right? Like a lot of times if you're writing a script and you're like, "Oh, this line is hilarious," and you send it out to, you know, your friend, and your friend sends it back and is like, "Oh, I didn't really find that line funny." That doesn't necessarily mean that the line you found hilarious is not funny. That just means that he or she didn't find it funny. And in order to do a second, or in order to really kind of hone in on what the issue is, you should then send it out to multiple other people with different perspectives
Yeah.
and different lives, and, you know, all that kind of jazz. So I think it's really important to take criticism, understand where that criticism is coming from, right? Did the person understand the story? If they didn't understand the story, then they can't really criticize it. And the criticism that you should take away from that is your story isn't clear because they didn't understand the story, right? Like so there are multiple different ways to kind of go about criticism. So anyways, the I think for me that's one of the most important steps in the process, is trying to understand, like, okay, what about this is working and what isn't working, and being very honest, right? If something doesn't work, like, you have to be your own biggest critic. You can't like love some sort of line and be like, yo, I have to keep this line. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Hmm.
So moving on, that's probably the most tedious process of the animating journey. But after that, once the script is final, I send it out to whoever's involved, whether I have a special guest, whether it's, you know, friends slash family, you know, whoever's part of the current script. I'll send out their lines to them. Sometimes I send them the entire script. Sometimes, if I have time, I'll send them just their lines and give them context for how I want the lines. And some people are great at being able to record the line once and send it back to me. Some people will need, 140 takes on a line as simple as like Hanji, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, no, yeah, and to each their own, right? Like not everybody has a different skill set, and so um, yeah, but it just depends. So once I get the audio recordings back, I then finalize the audio, uh, then take the audio and put it into the animating software. And a lot, I get this question a lot, like, oh, what do you use to animate? So I use actually a couple of different 3D softwares. I use Maya. It's Autodesk Maya. That's a big animation uh, software that people use. I use Blender. Blender is a big one. I use ZBrush is a big one. Maxwell. So all of these are like people are probably like, oh, okay, I don't know what any of this is, but if there's a 3D artist out there who wants to check them out, like all of those are great. iClone is great as well. So
Mhm.
so those are the different ones I use. So anyways, I put the audio into the animation software, and then I began animating, right? Like you start with or I start with the face, right? And I'll match it up to the voices, right? So if it's like Hanji, like moving the mouth and the eyebrows and all that kind of stuff. And then you move on to the arms and you move on to the legs. And then the last thing I do is I put them into the environment, right? So for this most recent animation that I created is a gas station, right? So I put the cashier behind the gas or behind the desk or the counter, sorry, and I put the boys, in the aisles or wherever, and yeah, and then after that is a process called rendering, and rendering takes 2 days usually, and I'm
Rendering takes
sure,
forever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of artists will know what rendering is, but for those that don't, like rendering basically is your computer going to town and just computing all of the information you've given it, so that it can present like the best image at the end, right? And so just for all the math geeks out there, here's what I'm gonna do is just give you a quick breakdown. So an animation that I make is usually 60 seconds long, 1 minute. Um, each second I do 30 frames, right? So each second has 30 frames, and each frame usually takes about 50 seconds to render. So for those of you who want to do the math, you can do 50 times 30, and that'll give you the number of seconds for 1 second of animation, and then you just multiply that by 60 again, and then that'll give you the number of seconds for an entire minute of animation. And it usually ends up being like a day and a half. So people hit me up like, "Paji, तुसी TV series बनाओ, तुही feature film बनाओ," and it's like, "Paji, that time yeah, but not but jokes aside, like I really appreciate people who reach out and say like, "Yo, you should do something with this and create a series and create a
Yeah.
feature film." Like it just means the world to me because it shows that they want more of it, right? So
Has the community response been? I mean, clearly the community response has been great, but have you ever been like overwhelmed by like when you first started out? Maybe when you first put out that the powerlifting video and then Abrika, like, did you ever just sit back and go, "Whoa, wait a second"?
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think I alluded to that a little bit earlier in the episode. Is after that powerlifting one, man, like I was like, yo, this is really something that can take off, right? And it can present something different in the realm of brown people slash social media, right? And the response I got uh is why I felt that way. Because people were like, yo, this is amazing, like this is so refreshing. And then I think the other big point where I felt that way is after the Babu video.
Yeah, definitely.
The
His got like he posted it on his account, right? He got like what a
Right.
100,000 views.
Oh, is that what it's at? Yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't.
and
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, yeah, wow. Like, and just quick pause, right? Like on the question, and I just want to take the time out to pump Babu's tires. Like, dude, the guy is amazing. Like, he is legitimately phenomenal. I'm so thankful that I was able to kind of connect with him, and for him to jump on and say, "Hey, let me know what you want me to do and how you want to do it, and I'm all ears and I'm all for it, and I'll record, whenever you want me to." Like for an artist to have somebody as big as Babu jump on a project, like it meant the world to me, man. And like that to this day, like I feel like that was one of the key moments in really kind of pushing Shishki P forward, where it's like, okay, you got this guy that's huge, and not only did he jump on the project, man, like he took it upon himself to kind of distribute the piece, right?
Yeah.
Like he put it on his page. He encouraged people to check out, my page. And from time to time, he'll still hit me up and ask me how I'm doing and what I'm working on and how like the guy's he's great, man. Like I really wish that within the world of Punjabi creatives slash Sikh creatives, uh, we had more people like
Yeah.
Babu.
How
So
did you guys
just
sort of
quick.
link up?
Yeah, like Babu has a great artist page that he runs. It's called Babu Babu Babu. I'd encourage everybody to check it out.
Mm.
He posts drawings and art pieces that he's created himself on there. It's a lot smaller than his main account, and I think that's by design for him. He wanted to kind of just focus on people who really like just appreciate the art side of things. Um, and I followed it because I really liked his work, and I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, like, love your work, like you're doing a great job, like, and it was honestly just to kind of shout out his talent and skill for drawing. And he reached out and was like, hey, like I saw your page, like it's amazing the work that you're doing, and uh, I think he actually mentioned that he wanted to be a voice actor or wanted to experiment with voice acting, and I kind of pounced on the opportunity and was like,
Yeah.
hey, like would love for you to have a role in one of my pieces. Like I'm totally down to do whatever and create whatever character that we need to to get you on board with this project. And he was so gracious about it, man. Like the guy was like, don't sweat it, I'll jump in whatever role you want me to jump in as. And that really enabled me to kind of create a piece where I felt honored him and his character, but also kind of stayed true to my animation and kind of the storytelling world that wanted to create for that piece. So yeah, that's kind of where we linked up. And after that, like, yeah, we started out as, this is a collaboration between Shishki P and Babu, but, and I don't know, like, how he feels about it, but, I can tell you from my end, like, he's one of my role models and somebody that I actually reach out to whenever I have a question about, like, okay, well, how do I manage this situation, right? Because he's been through it. He's
Yeah.
been through the world of Just Rain and kind of the social media and all that stuff. So yeah, shout out to Babu, man.
Yeah, shout out to Babu. I don't know how much clout he's gonna get from this, but
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
is,
no,
hey, go check out Babu.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's the other thing, right? Is like it's not really about like a lot. Yeah, sure. Like it's nice to get clout, from big accounts and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But more than that, right? For me is him and Preet Chal is another guy. He's one of my
Hmm.
buddies from Stockton, and like I always want to show these people, right? Like whoever has helped me along the way, I always want to show them like, look, you're not forgotten, and if you ever feel like you are, tell me, because I never want that to be the case. Like you people are the reason why I get to create and get to put out the content that I get to put out. And that's no easy, or like that's no small sort of drop in the bucket. For me, it's everything. It's the world.
Yeah.
So whether he gets some clout or not off of this is whatever. But I want to make sure that I'm always kind of
Yeah.
thanking Babu for what he did for me.
Yeah, and that's a big thing I think is especially now like uh there is this sort of like rise of I think sick creatives kind of coming into the space,
Definitely.
and and to see like a broader community form around that of people who are like you know, uh, as huge as Babu, and then even like smaller creators can exist within the same space and be within the same community is something
Right.
that I think is like really powerful and like super inspiring to see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. Yeah, because you see that and you say like, okay, I'm a small, sick creator and I got all these pressures working against me. But hey, look, on this side you have Shishki P who with the support of Babu was able to rise up,
Yeah.
right? And then, hopefully, who knows, maybe, in the future I'm in a position where I can help other people rise up and say, you know what, like give me your stuff. I'll put it out there. I'll help you, grow
Yeah.
and that's kind of the goal, right? Is
I mean,
to
hey, you're
to
helping
get
me out right now. I mean, honestly,
oh no.
like it's another thing of like you want to make sure that they don't just feel like stepping stones onto your
Right.
path of success, right? Like it's not just like for like you or any of the other guests that I've had on here, for example. I never wanted to feel like, oh, come on, we'll talk, and then get lost.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
like it is really, it's awesome to have you on here, and it's awesome to have everybody that we've had on here, and we want to keep that sort of community bolstering.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like look, at the end of the day, we're a small community, right? Like we're
Yeah,
we're we're not that big if you look at the world picture. And I think it's really, really important to kind of strengthen numbers, right? Like we gotta
totally.
help each other out. Like if there's one artist that's doing something great and you're getting a smile or a laugh or some sort of emotion out of it, support the person, right? It's not that hard, whether it's a follow, whether it's a whatever it is. So I think you're doing great, right? Like you got this initiative of this zero budget. First of all, I think the name is hilarious,
Thank
zero budget pod.
you.
Yeah, like way to be real, right? Like you want to talk about the realest of the real, like zero budget is where it's at, man. But yeah, like you got this initiative, and if anybody out there has the ability, right, or the resources to kind of jump on and help out and have a conversation, like why not, right? Like
Yeah.
let's do it. So
Especially because I think like a lot of the things that you've said and a lot of things that I've heard from my friend group and other people that have been on the podcast, it's like we have we all have like a common goal when it comes to the
right,
community and like how we want to bolster and push up the community. We have this, it's always about, or generally it's about representation. Like we want to get ourselves out there. We want to show ourselves, tell our stories. So,
facts,
like
facts, man.
why wouldn't we push each other up,
Exactly. No, 100%. I'm 100% on board with that. Like, and I think to that effect, like it makes me angry, right? When you see people, because there are people who like, let's be real, right? Like we're being real. There are people who will not do that, right? Who
Yeah.
will see
Keep to
you
themselves.
rising. Yeah. Or like, they'll see your content. Like here, I'm gonna be real, right? Like there are people who, uh, you know, are like, oh, Babu's great, right? Babu's content is fantastic. And then you check it out and they're like not following the guy, like they're
Yeah.
not giving him any support or love, like they're not leaving any and it's like, sure, like he doesn't need it, but at the end of the day, like he could benefit, right, from a comment. He could like his he you can kind of help him out and support the work that he's doing. But yeah, so I just think, like, I think it's important for everybody to take that message away, right? Like
Yeah.
do whatever you can. Like it doesn't cost money to leave a comment. It doesn't cost money to follow other artists that you benefit from, right? So whether that be Shishki P or whether that be Bubbu or whether that be the Zero Budget Pod, right? Like or whatever, like whoever that is, right? No matter how big or small, don't look at the follow count. Don't look at what they can do for you. Look at, am I taking something away from this person's content or this person's life? If the answer to that is yes, then help them out.
Yeah. And at the least, I think it helps, like self-esteem wise, I think, because
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I made a film about like, a year and a half ago at this point. And at this point, even like sometimes I get a notification like, oh, you got another like, or oh, you got another comment. And even, like when I see that, it's like, hey, nice, like
Yeah,
makes my day. I think about it like the entire day. Or even with the podcast, when I post it, somebody texts me and they're like, hey, I watched it, or they text me about a specific part in the podcast, makes my day. So
right,
and
right.
it encourages me to keep pushing forward. So at the least, you know just support
Dude,
each other. That's the positive
yeah,
message of the podcast. Just
yo,
support each other.
100%. And like, make no mistake, man. Like I'm super small, right? Like my page is like, I think it's like 8,000 some followers, and to somebody who has like 300 followers, that may seem like a lot, but like, there are content creators out there with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, right? So me in my little space, I can only speak for myself, is me a guy who runs a page of 8,000 followers. The same is true for me. When I get a comment, when I get a like, it is not it doesn't just disappear into the void. It's not like I don't see it. Like, I trust me, I'm a human being. Like, I see
Yeah,
that, I see the comment, I'm like, yo, that's dope. Like, I'm glad this person liked it. Like, I am a human being. I think that should not be lost. Like, a lot of times artists are seen as like, oh well, what, like, or like sometimes people with like huge followings, like, i.e. like Babu is the example we've been
yeah,
using a lot. So like, his page, right? Like, I don't know whether he sees it or not. He's obviously a lot bigger than I am, but I can only speak for myself when I say I see those comments and it makes my day, just like you, right? And it means a lot when people DM me and say like, hey, like, love from UK, right? And like, you're doing great. Like, and to be honest, like, I don't want to sound like I'm just like bashing on people who don't support, because there are so many people out there who do support,
yeah.
right? And like I've seen that love, right? There's over 8K people who are putting their faith and their energy and effort into following me and keeping up with my content, and that means the world, right? And that's what keeps me going. So there are people on both sides, but I would definitely say there are more people who support than
Yeah.
don't support. That last segment, I guess, would just be for the people who don't.
Yeah. What are some of your long term goals? So I don't. If you don't want to answer this question, that's totally fine. But do you have any broader sort of
Yeah,
ideas of where you want to take this?
yeah, no, definitely. Great question, man. I think, like, so long term, it depends on how long we're talking, right? Like, I guess for the upcoming year, I definitely want to continue working on content that I've been putting out, and kind of polishing my animation skills even more, and just kind of staying up to date with the latest techniques, latest 3D innovations. But beyond that, I really want to have uh, a a big enough base to where I can then go to, let's say like Hulu or Netflix.
Yeah.
HBO actually is a great production house for animation
Mm-hmm.
recently, and go to these larger studios and say, or streaming services, and say, hey, I have this type of content. These many people watch it religiously and consistently on a week or bi-weekly basis, or bi-monthly basis, right? And sorry, real quick, is that bi-weekly or bi-monthly? If it's like once every 2 weeks,
Once
I
every
was
two
get
weeks, biweekly.
okay,
Yeah.
bi-week, okay, cool, yeah. So bi-weekly basis, uh, and what, like, let's put this content on HBO. Let's put this on Hulu.
Yeah.
Let's put this on Netflix, right? Like, whatever it may be, let's do it. And at the end of the day, like, so many shows have gotten their start like that, right? Where they've shown the studio, like, look, we have X number of followers, X number of people who watch this content. Because at the end of the day, like, for the studio, it's a business model, right?
Yeah.
If they can show like, oh, these many viewers will tune in every week for an episode, they'll produce the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's my long-term goal, right? Is to build a base that's big enough to where we can translate the base into a series or a movie on, HBO, Hulu, or Netflix or whatever.
100%. Should we get into audience questions?
Let's do it, man. Let's
All
do it.
right. So we'll start off with some of the we have a wide range of audience questions
Bro, you're
this
let
week.
me
We have
just let
like
me just say you're like you're the sarpanch, bro. Like you
bro.
gotta run the pod like you run the pod. Like you're sarpanch sab. I don't know if you've seen the sarpanch sab shirt on Laddi, but that's you right now, man. You're sarpanch sab.
All
So
right.
you let me know what you want to do.
All right. We have a wide range. We have some very lighthearted ones and then some very deep topics. So we'll start with the lighthearted and then we'll go into the deeper.
Let's do it.
So first off, what's your Taco Bell order?
Oh man.
What's
That's
your
a
what's
good
your
one. Okay.
go-to, your classic?
Oh, dude, this is gonna be embarrassing because my like go to menu it legit ends up being like $20 because I order a bunch of stuff that I then eat for like 2 days.
Bro, don't
So,
be don't be embarrassed.
so
I order a bunch of stuff that I eat right then and there, so don't be embarrassed at all.
that's hilarious. Okay, so I will say I'm disappointed because Taco Bell just recently changed their menu up. I don't know if you knew this,
Oh,
but
dude,
they changed the
trust
menu
me,
up.
I know.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like the people who are dedicated like what at least once a week Taco Bell visitors are they're pretty
Yeah.
disappointed and broken up about it. But yeah, like my menu is I'll go usually the first thing I get is like a cheese quesadilla. Then
Mhm.
I'll go, cheesy gordita crunch. I'm a vegetarian, right? So like no meat and I try to tell them every time like yo no meat. But what I realized, dude, is they go super heavy on the beans. So I
Yeah.
like recently
Yeah.
have started telling them like yo go easy on the beans. Like just because I'm saying sub beans for beef or whatever doesn't mean
That's
that I
all you
want you to
want. Yeah.
yeah exactly. So like give me like light beans, yo, because this guy's gotta wake up and do things, tomorrow. I can't just, so yeah, I'll go cheese quesadilla, cheesy gordita crunch. It depends. Sometimes I'll go Mexican pizza, sometimes not, but
Mhm.
and then I'll go 7 layer. Man, like I customize my orders a lot. Like for the 7 layer, I'll take out the rice. I'm not a big Joel fan in the burritos, so I'll go with, spicy chipotle in there instead. But yeah, those are usually my big items.
Have you ever had the 5 layer burrito?
No, oh, is that the one with the red strips?
I don't think so. But okay,
Okay,
here's
no,
here's what I do. Hear me out.
yeah,
5 layer burrito, right? Sub
yeah,
beans, or no, sub beef. This is when they had potatoes. Sub beef for potatoes, and then
okay.
add red strips and red sauce. It's so clutch.
Oh, dude, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, because their
That's
nacho sauce, their nacho cheese sauce is like the
yeah,
best thing on the menu, and the 5 layer
dude.
burrito is just like 2 layers of nacho cheese sauce.
That's amazing. That like I know they took out the potatoes, but I think some of that I can still make work. So
Yeah,
I'll
definitely,
have to hit
definitely try that out. That's my
dude.
go to.
So I will say like the Taco Bell sauces right are like phenomenal. They're like unlike
Definitely.
any other to the point where I actually spent an entire summer trying to perfect the quesadilla sauce. The it's like the
Oh
spicy
yeah, yeah, yeah.
jalapeno sauce. And I gotta say, like, I'm gonna try to pump my own tires. Actually, that's exactly what I'm about to do. But I was I was able to replicate it pretty well, right? Like I got the sauce down. So now that's actually something
Damn.
I make at home too. Like I'll make the quesadillas and
Damn, that's
I'll just
such a
add that.
flex. That's such a
Yeah,
flex. You got guests coming over, you're like, hey, don't worry.
yeah, yeah. Unless those guests are like 40-year-old uncles that are like, oh, roti nahi khande
They're always trying
teriyaki.
to bash Taco Bell.
Yo, I'm saying, bro, like it's not even just Taco Bell. It's always like, oh, bahar da khana ta kare bana sakte hain. And it's like, yo, like,
Facts.
what if sometimes I'm not trying to eat like a burrito stuffed with gajar di sabji? Like, what
Facts.
if that's what my stomach is not craving? So yeah, but yeah, good question, man. I was thrown off about by that a little bit.
Next question. Do you like pickles? Yes or no?
Yes. I have phases, right? Like sometimes and I feel like everybody does, right? Like you sometimes you're gonna like the like I'll eat pickles for a long time and then they'll just kind of disappear off the palate for a
Hmm.
little bit. Right? And it's like and then you have it in a burger at some random place and you're like, "Oh, like pickles. Like why did I ever stop eating pickles, right? And so then you binge on pickles a little more, and
Mhm.
and so yeah, so yes, I do like pickles,
Are you a dill kind of guy?
dude. I gotta say, like I'm not 100% on what that even means. Like I know dill
So
pickles are a
dill is
thing.
like the standard, and
Okay.
then bread and butter is like the sweet kind, and I hate those.
Oh, dude, yeah. No.
Yeah.
I'll hard pass on the sweet and
Okay. Dill
sweet.
full
Yeah,
on.
so dill, hands down.
Someone says, would you rather bungee jump or skydive out of a plane?
I'm too much of a wuss to do either, if I'm being
Really?
honest, bro. That's a question you ask like some athlete or like somebody who's like really physically active, right? Like or like very like brave. Right, your boy is some guy that sits behind a computer cranking out cartoons. Like
Sitting here
I'm not the guy.
talking to an animator and a podcaster talking about skydiving and bungee
Yeah,
jumping.
yeah, like yeah, dude. I mean, I will say, maybe podcast exclusive here, yeah. But
Ooh.
maybe one of the upcoming episodes, I was thinking about like one of the thoughts that I had was the medium of animation is so unique that you can put like the characters anywhere doing anything,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so I was talking to one of my friends, and I was like, "Hey, why don't we just have Luddy in an airplane about to skydive?
Oh,
Like,
I
why don't
love
we just
that.
do that? Like, why don't we do that? Right? Like, it's yeah, maybe that's not like super realistic. Or like, maybe that's not something that would happen, right? Like, whose dad actually does that? But it would be funny, and I think it's something that we can utilize animation for because live action doesn't really allow for that, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't really have like Joe Schmo record a skydiving experience
Yeah.
with an uncle, right? So
Yeah.
so I think maybe something along those lines, something a little more ludicrous, but more suited for animation
Yeah.
might be on the way.
That's another thing I think I'm gonna gas you up real quick. I really like about your content is I remember in maybe late 2000s to like 2015 there was this huge wave of like Desi parents, brown parents, that kind of content,
Right,
like from every corner.
right,
And again, like a lot of the criticism with that now looking back is like it was caricatures or like
right,
stereotypes. And
right.
I think the way that you play it is it's more like character driven, and it's like uh, it again like it has a very like positive message for the community rather than hey look Desi parents are bad and
Right, right. No, 100%, 100%. That was actually something. I'm so glad that you said that. Right, like I really appreciate that too. Like that was one of my goals. Right, I don't want the uncles or the quote unquote older generation in the animations to seem like they're bland or that they don't have depth to
mm-hmm.
them. Um, and in fact, I actually have an animation coming out at some point. And it's a complete 180 from what I'm currently doing. Like it's not funny. It's meant to be very uh sweet but sad,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the purpose behind that piece is going to be to give the backstory to Dada, to the Bapu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to what, kind of what kind of life he had or what what he was kind of going through. So I like, yeah, to that point, to that effect, like 100% don't want the animations to seem like they're making fun of the parents or that they're shooting any sort of shots
Yeah,
at how they're living their lives. Like yeah, like of course, like this like, some of the stuff is funny, right? Like the dad trying to turn off the TV when there's like a sex scene playing. Like yeah, like
totally.
of course, but that's not a shot at the dad, right? That's just
Yeah,
something that we kind of go through. And so yeah, to I'm very glad that you kind of brought that up and noticed that. Like that makes me very happy, so thank you.
of course. Now we're here. Here's where we start to get into sort of the deeper stuff. How has this
Yeah.
page affected you creatively and generally? And I thought another question kind of tied into that, like, how has making animations impacted your life?
Yeah. So how has it affected me creatively? Yeah, I like it's yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Because sometimes like you have the juice, right? Like you wake up and you're going through your day, you're going through your motions, right? And like you're having a good day. We all have good days. And on the good days, like it's easy to kind of crank out an idea. It's easy to sit down and be like, okay, let me, do this, let me do that in terms of the animation. Let me work on this aspect or whatever. But on the days when you're not having a good day, and we all have days that are not so good, we're human. On those days it's tough, right? Like
Yeah.
it's tough to sit down and say like here's something, and maybe this is a quote that's already like been out there, but like I got a lot. I'm a sucker for quotes and stuff, man. Like I don't know if you, maybe over the course of like the last hour and a half our listeners have gauged that this is true, but one something that I've kind of really fell in love with a quote recently is, it's hard to be funny when you're not feeling funny, right? Like
Yeah.
that's and that I've noticed to be true recently so much, right? When you're having days when you're like, man, like things just not going well, right? What, for whatever reason. And you try to sit down and you try to hammer out a script, or you try to hammer out some facial animation, or trying to animate the body, or set up a camera in one corner of the room or what, and you're like, it's just not working, right? And
Hmm.
those are the days when creatively you are challenged. And for me, honestly, maybe somebody else has, and every person is different, right? Like that's a qualifier. But for me, what I've realized is in those situations and those moments and those days, it's best to turn off the computer, step aside,
Yeah.
stop thinking about the work you're doing, and focus on the things that are positive in my life, right? Like what are the things that keep me happy? I'm a big sports guy. Like I love hockey. I watch a ton of hockey. I've been watching, so there's 82 games a season for my team, right? The Colorado Avalanche. And like every year. I've been watching them since like 2001,
Hmm.
and 82 games a season, and they've been so bad. They've been ass for like the last like 18 years. And the last 2 years, like they finally turned it around. Like they're a good team now, and like the playoffs just started. So I just turn off the computer and I watch hockey. I watch a show that I'm interested in. I talk to the people that I love, that love me. And you know so yeah, so that's kind of the answer to that first part. I forgot what the second part was. I told
Uh,
you, man, I ramble a lot.
yeah. The second one was like how has it affected you like generally or mentally? But I think that kind of ties
Yeah,
in
yeah,
unless you want to
that
expand
kind
on
of
that a
fell
little
in.
more.
No, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, just yeah.
Um, do you ever feel like your work isn't appreciated enough?
No, I don't think that's true. I think sometimes, I don't think that's true baseline. I think sometimes you can trick yourself into thinking that,
Yeah.
um as an artist, where you're like, like person X or group X is not appreciating what I'm doing.
Hmm.
By and large, I don't think that's true. It's, for me, in my experience, I mentioned earlier in the podcast the Sick Lens Film Festival with Vicky Uncle, and it was 4 people in the audience. But along with those 4 people, uh, my brother-in-law, my sister, they showed out. And the film festival was in LA, and both of them are based in the Bay Area. So they flew down to LA for a film festival that I told them time and time again. I was like, no, 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 you guys don't need to come out. It's not a big deal. It's just kind of whatever. And they flew out there in the middle of the day, same day. It's a work day, uh, to watch my animation and to appreciate what I did. So that showed me, right, like, yeah, maybe on a day-to-day basis, maybe they don't appreciate, or like family sometimes may not appreciate, like, oh, this guy's putting in this much effort.
Hmm.
But when push comes to shove, like, yeah, like they do recognize, like, you're putting in the effort. you're
Yeah.
you're you're, you're and I think you can zoom out and apply that same sort of general rule to the community, right? Like on a day-to-day basis, maybe I'm not getting like DMs or the love or whatever, right? Like that an artist is constantly craving, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
like, I need people to tell me that I'm good,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise you feel like you're not. But I think when you do get those messages, you begin to understand, like, you know what, like people really do appreciate the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's really what I was sort of try to get out with that question is like being like a creative or a creator like sucks because your mind's always like playing tricks on you, and it's always you're always like convincing yourself of like half truths or things like that, or
Oh,
like when
100%.
you put something out and it doesn't get as many views, then it's like, oh, they just hate me now, like they're gone, that's it.
100, dude, 100%. 100%. Like the fear that goes through my body before I post a video every time is like it's undefeated, bro. It's undefeated. Like every time I'm posting a video, right? Uh the process that I go through is like I'll do three chopi de part. That's like I do my part, I do my ardas, and then I'll put up the video, right? And I'm like, I try to step away from it because I'm like, oh boy, like it's gonna be bad. Like I'm
Yeah.
about to come back to pitchforks and flamethrowers, and people are gonna be like, yo, you need to. And especially with this last one, like it kind of had that raunchy like sex scene playing on in the
Mm-hmm.
back, and like you know, uh, and so couple people were, like reached out personally. Were like, a couple conservative people reached out and were like, like this is too much
Yeah.
nudity and this and that, and it's like, so you always have to, yeah, you're right, your mind is always playing tricks on you, and sometimes those tricks can be worse when they're validated by like person A or person B from outside. But at the end of the day, you have to remember, like, you created the piece because you felt something inside of you, and whether somebody likes it or not, like that's not in your control. The only thing in your control is to create a piece. And the response is not for you to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
worry about, because at the end of the day, people are gonna love, hate, be mad about, be excited about all sorts of different stuff. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
way to drop a vague ending there, right? Like
yeah.
what does that even mean? That story of my life, but whatever.
This next one is a very complex question, but I thought it would be interesting just to sort of touch on a little bit. What impact do you think the British Raj has had on our way of thinking?
Yeah. Oh no. Great. Great. That's a little left field, but I love it. Like it's actually something that I was talking to one of my friends about. So like the British Raj, right? Like it goes back to that Fair and Lovely video, right? That's it's kind of some elements there too, but let me just kind of break it down a little further. Is like with my political science background, like I try to think critically about like the politics of it all and kind of what went on behind the scenes, sort of psychologically for our people. And I think with the British Raj in Punjab, right, in India at large, what happened is like you had this massive like Eurocentric ideology that presented itself in Punjab, right? And it was subtle at first, right? It's like, okay, for example, like skin soft honi chahiye, quote unquote, right? Like first of
Yeah.
all, soft means clean. That doesn't mean white. It means
Yeah.
clean. So it shouldn't, like, we shouldn't equate that with skin being white. But like I concepts like that, right? Like it was all subtle, right? But then I think the bigger thing is there was a fear of the government that was sort of the seed for that was planted early on, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
know this is a little bit of a wild in response, but I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it.
Your audio sort of cut out there a little bit.
But like I think planted when the British strolled into Punjab, and I don't think our people have recovered to this day. Like I think our people have forever since that moment been afraid of the government, been afraid to been afraid of the police, right?
Yeah.
By and large, like of course you have freedom fighters, people who stood up for the cause and all that stuff, and shout out to them, of course. Like I don't want to take that away, but
Yeah.
even here, right? Like today, our people are here. Like you, like just rewind real quick. Like 84 happened, right? And like our people were by and large like afraid of the government and the government's response, right? Like so yeah, so like I think once like obviously you had like Santa Janelle saying like they stood up for the cause and fighting for our people, and you had freedom fighters in 84 at large, but the community and families in the band, even in cities, right, like all that kind of stuff, like you had this sentiment of don't question the government. Why did I have to go into the bus stop? And you had like all of these sort of pro government sentiments that popped up, and I think they originally, like the seed that we were talking about, was planted way back when the British showed up, at least in my opinion. And then you have another chapter of that, right? Was when my parents and that generation came over to the States or to Canada or wherever, and you had this mindset of keep your head down, don't worry about it, don't think about the government. If the government comes knocking on your door, whatever they're knocking on your door for, they're right. Law enforcement, whatever they say, they're right. Just keep your head down and work hard, and you're gonna be okay. And I
Totally.
think that sentiment it needs to change, starting with our generation, right? Like we got to start standing, and you're seeing a lot of that now with obviously with the George Floyd situation and kind of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think our community has also stepped up and said, hey, like let's look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, what can we do to step up, not only for ourselves but for them as well, and
Mm-hmm.
um, how can we challenge law enforcement slash government to be better and do right by us. So I think those are all seeds that were planted by the British early, right? Like back when they first showed up. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think you're still 100 years almost for that to kind of come about. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, anybody saying that psychology can change overnight, I think is fooling themselves.
Yeah. Sort of with that, because I think you were onto something when you said there's a lot of like mistrust in the government and stuff like that with our community. Um, Conspiracy theories is something that we
Yeah,
got a lot of. We got a lot of requests to ask you about conspiracy theories.
yeah,
So, are there not just maybe not just with conspiracy theories, but also like paranormal, supernatural, anything? Is there any of that stuff that you believe in, you're interested in?
yeah. Like I'll say like okay, so I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. Like I don't believe in a ton of them. Having said that, I'm always like trying to keep my nose or my ear to the ground when it comes to conspiracy theories. Like I like to watch shows where they're kind of discussing conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
So I think like the current one that everybody's talking about is the coronavirus, right?
Uh huh.
Like the 5G. I think that's died down a little bit. Like oh, it was started by 5G, but I think the one that people are talking about more now is that coronavirus was started in a lab, right? I think is that
Yeah. Yeah. I think with Corona, they say it started. It's like a bioterrorism started in like a Chinese lab or something. Hello.
yeah? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can hear you now. Yeah. With Corona, I think they said it started in like a Chinese lab for like bioterrorism or something.
Yeah, and it's like I don't. So I know that the doctor that originally was like, "Yo, this is something crazy." In reference to the coronavirus, he died under some suspicious circumstances or something like
Yeah.
that, and like I thought that was pretty wild. Like yo, bro, like nobody just up and dies, especially if they're a doctor in the hospital, right? Like they just snuffed this guy out, so clearly there was something up. right? Like I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer. I'm a firm believer in like one coincidence, fine. More than one, it's not a coincidence. Like something's up.
Yeah.
Like something shady's happening. So, and like the other thing is, dude, like you hear about the U.S. government all the time, right? Like they're involved in other people's stuff and like other people's business, and we may not know about it today, but I promise you, in like 60 years in the history books, like, or maybe not even in the history books because they kind of censor those,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in 60 years, like you're probably gonna hear about like, oh yeah, back in like 2016, or somewhere in this time period, the U.S. was involved here, and they were doing this, and they were selling
Oh yeah, dude. We
X
interfere with like,
item to Y country for Z reason, and
yeah.
it's like, okay,
Yeah,
all
I mean,
right, great.
if
Like,
you can just
what
like
were we
look it up
doing,
on,
during that time,
you can look it up on like Wikipedia or something. Like we interfere with elections all the time. Like foreign elections, there's like a,
dude?
it's such a long list of how many elections we've interfered in. It's
Yeah,
insane.
it's. I mean, yeah, like my dad is always talking about like uh he was, I think he was leaving um India around this time, or like he was in college somewhere around that time period in India, uh when the Iranian oil crisis was taking place,
Mhm.
uh and the sheikh, and like how like the US kind of just pumped up this other guy is like the sheikh, and kind of had him take over Iran as like the as the prime minister, or like whatever, like the leader, it's like, yeah, like, and you see that in Venezuela, you
Yeah.
see the US doing it in like all these other, like, it's like I feel like they do it time and time again in like South America. Like that's where they really are just like, all right, yo, like we're gonna put this guy in place
Yeah.
because he's selling us coffee for cheap. And it's like, yo, honestly, some of these reasons that they do it for is like, yo, bro, what? Like this is some
Facts.
mafia slash hitman type shit. But I
Interfering in
mean,
like an entire government just because like cacao is cheaper. It's
yeah, yo,
insane.
it's a thing, dude. It's a
It's
thing. Like,
crazy. Yeah.
bro, yeah, because everybody knows, like, in this capitalistic ass country, like, coffee is the only way to survive. So the value on coffee is high.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest one that I sort of subscribe to would be the Epstein one. I don't think there's any way in hell you could like look at Epstein dying and think, "Yep, there's nothing shady going on there."
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? Like, so it's funny because you asked me about conspiracy theories. I don't even think that's a conspiracy theory. Like,
Yeah.
I legit think, like facts, dude, facts. The guy was a dirtbag, and he was about to rat out some high profile
Very
folks.
powerful people. Yeah.
100%, dude, 100%, and like he was about to do it, and like you're telling me this guy who's supposed to be under 24-hour surveillance, like, is okay. You kidding me? This some out of like, I feel like whoever came up with the plan to off him just watched like Prison Break, right, on like
Yeah.
CBS or whatever, and they were like, okay, dude, we're here. This is perfect. We're gonna execute some bullshit
Yeah.
like this, and we're just gonna tell the world that it was that it was suicide.
Yeah,
Like,
some shit like
no.
the security guard takes a nap at 9 p.m. every night. Then we take out the security cameras and we sneak into. It's some like wild shit. It's
Yeah,
just the
it did.
tiny ass details.
I'm telling you, dude. They probably like yeah, that's ridiculous stuff for sure, dude. Like, you kidding me? Like, there's no way that and I think the time frame for him, the security guard stepping out, was like super short too. I
Yeah,
don't, like, details are a little fuzzy for me, but like, yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, the security guard left for like a short amount of time and like got wrecked. And that's not what happened, man. Like, what happened is he's Epstein was about to rat out some high profile folks, and they were like, no, we can't have this. So
yeah,
dude, I tell you what, like, the world is full of like shady and corrupt folks, and
mm,
it's a miracle that we are able to survive every day
yeah.
that we do.
I feel like at the least, if you don't believe he was killed, then you have to like it's basically a fact that he was pressured into killing himself at the very least.
Dude, and that's like at the very, like, I to be honest, I don't even buy that, because it's
Yeah,
like, like there's no way that it wasn't somebody offing him. Like because if somebody like yo, bro, like somebody came to me and was like, you gotta off yourself or we're gonna do it for you. I'd be like, listen, if the end result is the same, then you might as well do
Yeah.
me the honors of doing it for me,
Yeah.
because
But
you know.
please,
So yeah,
please.
yeah, because I'm not doing this shit to myself.
Yeah.
So
What do you think
so
of our great President Trump wishing Ghislaine Maxwell a good day?
yeah,
You hear about
yeah.
that?
No, yeah, no, bro. Like I'm a Trump supporter, so you know, no, hell no. What? Yeah,
My heart
no,
stopped for
dude.
a second. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I just in case, dude. I had to fire up that hell no real quick because, dude, there are people out there who like as soon as they hear that they're like, "F this guy," like,
Yeah.
who like so. But no, like okay, here's what I'll say, right? Like on just like the political field right now, like we're picking between the lesser of two evils, in my true opinion, right?
Yeah.
Like Joe Biden, I think is a good guy from everything that I've read on him and just kind of his policies. I think are not bad. Having said that, I'm I'm very against Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is if people don't know is so out here in California she became the attorney general for the state. I want to say like 2011 or 2012, and uh, the first case that she got was a sick man, Dari Kesala, and he wanted to take some sort of training. He was a prison guard, and he wanted to take some sort of training to respond to like poisonous gas. And in order to do that, he had to wear some sort of mask. And the case was the prison was saying we can't allow him to take this training, and therefore we can't allow him to increase his paycheck slash responsibility because the gas mask doesn't make a seal around his face because
Yeah.
he has facial hair. And so that was the case, and the case was very easy to shut down because all they had to do was say, look, we'll come up with an alternative, or you can have some sort of mask created that proves to be a better seal, right, than
Mhm.
whatever we have currently. But instead, they chose to say, like, oh, no, you just can't do it. So the case went to Kamala Harris. And rather than, support our sick brother, she decided to not look into the circumstances at all and say, yeah, no, like religion doesn't play a role in this. Like you have to serve, and so I like everything she says from that point on until we get an apology, until the Sikh community at large gets an apology from her. I personally, it is my opinion that whatever she's saying is just lip service. like
Yeah.
like
Oh,
you know like
100%.
like
Yeah.
because on one side you have a guy, right, like Osant Raja, like Trump, right, like you have him, right, like this guy's obviously like he's terrible for the country, right, like
Yeah.
he incites hate, he's very divisive, right, like all that stuff. But then on the flip side you have somebody who uh has directly impacted our Sikh community, right, and it's
Mhm.
like, well, I don't really know. On one side you have this guy who's like known to incite all this stuff, and on the other side you have a person who's directly carried out actions uh, that are harmful to our community. So I like, to me it's the lesser of two evils. Having said
Yeah.
that, like obviously Trump is so bad, and I don't want him in power. I don't think a lot of people in this country do. So
Mm.
if we can come together. I think the biggest thing is like protests. Yeah, like all this stuff is great, and everybody is doing what they can. Right, a lot of people are like leading protests. That's fantastic. More power to them. But the one thing I will say is like none of it matters if we don't vote come election day. Right. So
100%.
so to whoever's listening, to whoever wants to talk politics or discuss this issue, like at the end of the day the end goal, end result should always be the same, and that is let's get out and let's vote,
Yeah.
and let's get this guy out of power,
Yeah.
because everything he's doing is setting our country back more and more. So
Yeah, the way that I look at it is like at the end of the day, for any one of these issues, you have to step
right,
back and look at the bigger picture, right? So, like even, you know, Kamala Harris, the whole sick thing is like it's awful, but then you look at the flip side, and it's like I watched some clips from the RNC last night, right? And it's just like straight up
Right.
fascism. So it's like
Yeah.
you like it really is lesser of two evils. It's about harm reduction. So it's like 4 more years, we just inch closer and closer to fascism every day, which is dangerous for 300 million people, or let's say
Right.
half of that, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
Whereas, getting Kamala Harris, is she likely to genocide or anything? Or is she even not that extreme? Is she likely to like
Right.
target or even
Right.
care about the Sikh population? We'll probably just be left on our own,
Right.
which was
Right.
what we have been
That's
for a long amount of time. So it's, you know,
yeah. That's
I
fair.
look at harm reduction, and I think we get the greatest amount of harm reduction with Biden
Yeah.
versus
Yeah. Facts. Facts. I mean, it's sad though, right? Like to sit here in this country and say like, oh, we're not electing
yeah
a president that we feel is going to be better for us. We're electing a president that we feel will do less harm, and
yeah
I think that speaks volumes about where we are as a country. And hopefully, like 2008, right? Like 2008 came around, Obama was up, and like everybody kind of felt like, yo, like this is fantastic. Like this is why we are who we are. This is why we're so great. And like 8 years later, we got this orange peel in office
yeah
that oh my god, like geez, dude.
yeah
But it just, like, again, like, to bring this back to like the creatives, right? Like it goes to show the power that celebrities in pop culture and media wields, right, on everything, right? Like the guy's face was plastered over TV on NBC for The Apprentice for years, right?
hmm
And he got that name recognition, he got that media sort of glam, and translated it into a freaking presidency, right? Like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah
if you can go from The Apprentice to becoming president, like, why can't our people rise up and go from who we are today into tomorrow being on screen, and then the third day being in the White
yeah
House, right? Or at the very least in the Senate, right? Or the Supreme Court. Like we can go any, and I think shout out to Jagmeet Singh
I
and,
was
and
thinking
the
that same
NDP.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like those guys are killing it up in Canada, right? Like, way to go. Like, they're putting in work. And another shout out to Karnveer Singh. He's a dude out in New Jersey. He's putting in work. Like, he's a kid on the rise in the political realm. So keep a lookout for him. He looks like he's on to bigger and better things for us, for sure.
yeah. Let's get into our final segment. We have a theme song for this one, so it's
Oh
a
man,
banger. Look out for that. All right, here we go. Ready?
let's
Ready?
do it.
What have we been doing? That's it. That's the whole theme song.
I was like waiting for the. I was like, wait, am I supposed to drop some bars on this, or
I
what's
mean, if
going
you
on
want to, feel free.
here? No, no, man. Like, that's the other thing. Like, people who are lyricists, right? Like, that's a talent. Like, I
Oh
don't
yeah,
have that at all. Like, people who can come up with lyrics slash write lyrics are like phenomenal. Like,
yeah.
I sing for fun. That's kind of what I do on the side. But man, like, I don't know what to sing because I don't ever write a good lyrics. So
Yeah,
so
writing poetry and stuff just generally is so difficult. It
yeah,
takes
yeah.
such a unique mind to be able to do that.
Facts, man,
Yeah.
facts. Shout out to Harpreet XG on IG. She
Shout
comes
out.
up with some, yeah, she comes up with some great poetry. So check it out if you get a chance.
Yeah. This is a segment where we just talk about movies, books, games, anything that we've been doing in the past few. I talk about past week because I'm on there every week, but anything that you've been doing, anything you've been interested in to keep you entertained
Yeah.
throughout the quarantine process. So, what have you been doing?
Yeah, what have I been doing? That's a great question, man. I've been, like I said earlier, like, I've been watching a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, like, one of the shows that I just recently got into and am actually almost done with. Well, there's two. One is Perry Mason. I don't know if you know about that. It's on HBO. It's like a 1932s, like a noir type
Ooh.
show. It's super good. I like it. I'm a big fan. It's like detective kind of material. So it's good. I would check that out. The other show that I have been into is Avatar. In
Yeah.
and yeah, and I've been late on that front. Like a lot of my friends have been telling me to watch it for years, and
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it until very recently. And like, dude, I gotta say, like for animation, right? Like that was early on, right? Like 2006, I want to say is when it came out, 2005, somewhere in that range. And like the tools for animation back then were not that good. And so for them to kind of do what they did with that show, and like more than anything though, dude, the storytelling for that show is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like from episode to episode, like the way they capture the emotion, right? All that
Hmm.
stuff, like story, like it's phenomenal. So
It's so like
it's a great show.
mature but palatable by any audience.
Oh,
Like it's
facts,
so
facts, dude,
like
facts.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So Avatar is definitely the other one I would encourage people to check. I think they just came out with like, didn't they release like a new series on Netflix
Yeah.
after like
The
Legend of Korra or something?
yeah, it was a sequel, Legend of Korra, and they just put it on Netflix. I think it's like 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's
yeah,
4 seasons. Yeah,
I have to
great.
start watching that. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. So if people are like, yo, Paji, animation kado, and y'all not getting a response, you know what I'm watching. So so
um,
yeah.
I think I haven't really been watching much. I've been trying to keep up with the DNC and the RNC. Um,
Okay.
the 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 DNC, some of the clips that I've seen, it's just kind of. Listen, they're trying their best.
Yeah. Yo,
It's
come
just
on, man. Come on,
it's
man.
so goofy. The DNC,
Yeah.
they do these dumb little skits. They did one with Andrew Yang and Julia Louis Dreyfus, and it's
Uh-huh.
so cringe to watch.
Oh
They're
man.
just
Oh man.
they're trying their best. But the
Yeah,
RNC,
dude.
terrifying.
Dude, yeah, those like it shocks me because here's the other thing, right? Is like I'll log on, like obviously I support the blue cause, right? The
Yeah.
democratic cause always, but the I'll go on like Fox News to see like what the other side is saying or what they're promoting on
Oof.
their page, and like if I'm being honest, dude, like they just the censorship game is so real within media, right?
Yeah.
Like Fox will not like even their thumbnails for articles. Like for example, just yesterday, with Jacob Blake and the whole incident,
Oh yeah.
taking place, which is terribly sad. Like, shouts out to him and his
Yeah.
family, and just terrible the stuff that's happening. But so you go to NPR, right? And like uh one of the top headlines is another shooting of a black man in Wisconsin, right? So
Hmm.
that was the headline. Okay, then you go to Fox News and there that article is nowhere to be found. There's nothing about a black man being shot. In fact, if you scroll down just a little bit on Fox News, uh one of the top articles was um police policemen shot responding to robbery. uh
Crazy.
and yeah, and so like that just goes to show you that like you as the media can control whatever narrative you
Yeah.
want, or like you can put out whatever narrative you want to put out, right? Like people reading Fox News are going to be like, wow, like look at these police officers, they're putting their lives on the line and they're getting shot, nobody's talking about this. And on the flip side, you have Jacob Blake and CNN and the sort of liberal side of things, where it's like, oh, like you know black lives are being lost, on a essentially on a regular daily basis,
Hmm.
uh, at the hands of police officers, right? So it's like you have these two conflicting narratives, and it's like, yo, you realize like you can have a blend of both of this, and just come somewhere, in the sense of like journalism, come to an unbiased point of
Yeah.
view and say, look, black lives are being lost at the hands of police. Police officers are risking their lives to help communities and protect people. And there needs to be some sort of a solution to
Yeah.
that former issue that we talked
Yeah.
about,
It's
right?
it's
And
about
so
like
like
critical thinking. Like really,
yeah,
at the end of the day, just critical thinking about what you consume.
Right, right, 100%. I think that's why, uh, just kind of looking at these articles and using your brain really more than anything is critical. Like you can't just look at like don't watch the news and be passive. Like that's kind of one of the
100%.
worst things you can do. Like you can't just like grab like your dinner and like start watching the news and be like, okay, I'm gonna just kind of wind down because
Yeah.
winding down like they're inserting information into your mind subconsciously that you don't even know is happening.
Yeah.
So
And
take that for conspiracy theory, bro.
that's why watching the RNC last night, it was like it was so like eye opening because
Yeah,
I never check out Fox News. I was kind of like dismissed it as whatever. It's just conservative
right,
drivel. I get it. But then
right,
watching it last night, I was like, no, I really get it. Like I understand how if someone watches Fox News or only consumes like conservative content and stuff,
right.
it's so this content I think like obviously we can do the both sides thing, but I think more so than things like CNN is so like propagandistic
Oh,
in
hands
its
down.
approach. Like they did a whole the one speech that's really blowing up is like is this one I forgot her name, but the woman in the red dress who just shouted just nationalism, American exceptionalism, and all this
Right,
stuff at the camera. And it's like, I understand how
right.
someone in that mindset, or someone who, like you said, is winding down after a long day watching this,
Yeah,
can start to buy into it. Like, I get it.
right.
And I think we need to understand the content that they're being fed so that we can then combat it in a correct way uh, based on
Oh,
that. So, yeah.
100%. 100%, dude. Yeah, couldn't have said it any better. Like it's wild, right? Like and there's so many factors that play into that, but at the end of the day, the broad general statement is uh news will tell you what they want to tell you,
Mm,
and so you need to remember that the news doesn't start and end with CNN. The news doesn't start and end with Fox News. The
mm,
news doesn't start and end with NPR or any of these other sources. The news starts and ends with the amount of research you do,
yeah.
right, on any particular topic or article or whatever. So yeah, the other quick thing that I just kind of popped up in my head is like when you said nationalism, right? Like a lot of times, like, and this is something that my mom brought up. So shout out, Mama Shishki P. But but the she mentioned like because I sit around the table and kind of have these discussions with my folks too, and like something she brought up was it's funny because like what are we, right? We're first generation Asian Americans, right? Like that's essentially what we were like. That's our title, right? Like that's what we're called.
Mhm.
Um, and like you have other people, right, who are like first generation Latino Americans, right? Like first generation African American or like whatever, right? Like but when it comes to like European folks, there's no like there's no label attached to them. They're just white, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's no like first generation Finnish American or first generation German American. No, it's
Mhm.
just they're white, so and they're white passing, so you just call them white. And it's like inherent in that ideology is like this country is yours, but we have to kind of label
Yeah.
ourselves differently because we're quote unquote
Yeah.
outsiders. And I think that's dangerous, right? And I think we should work to change that. There are
Yeah.
a lot of issues that we can work to change. And obviously, like I'm not advocating for this to be at like the forefront of anything, but just something to keep in mind, like we're not like, yeah, maybe, just kind of technically we're first generation Asian Americans, but man, F it. Like I am an American and that's who I am,
Yeah.
and you can like it or love it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great place to cap that off. So, Sahib, thank you so much for joining us. You have the floor. Whatever you want to promote, anything you want to shout out, floor is yours.
thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Again, really appreciate you taking the time out, kind of bringing me on and showing me some love and asking me some brilliant questions, man. Like means the world. Uh, at the end of the day, I'm just a small time guy creating content, and for you to give me this platform to talk about issues and topics that excite me and make me happy. Like it means the world to me, and hopefully the listeners took something away from this, and I was able to provide a laugh, a smile, a thought, or whatever it may be, and so all the credit goes to you for putting this together and bringing me on. So I really appreciate that. I also want to shout out, all the people who have shown me so much love, to this date. It means the world. It really does. And we've talked about it a lot throughout the course of the podcast, but just once again, the love means the world. For you to send me a DM, for you to leave a comment, for you to hit that like button, for you to tell your family about the work that I'm doing, for you to keep me in your thoughts at any point throughout the day is it's truly something that I wish everybody could experience, because it shows you what love truly is. And so, having said that, I'm excited to continue to grow, and I'll put out a new animation here in the upcoming days, and hopefully it'll get some love, and I don't crash and burn and start doubting myself and shut everything down. So, we'll keep it going here, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, check out Saib Singh at Shishki. Is it at Shishki Productions on Instagram?
So it's at Shishki P. So
At
just
Shishki P.
Shishkip. Yeah. Yep, yep.
On Instagram and Twitter, I believe, right?
Yeah, on Twitter. Twitter, honestly, hasn't like I haven't logged on Twitter in a hot minute, but yeah. So IG would probably be the one. We got a YouTube channel coming soon. So just IG for now. But yeah, we are on Twitter, but IG would be the main source.
Definitely check that out. And then you have a new animation that I think by the time this comes out will have already been out, right, on your Instagram?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is correct.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Quick little couple things. In regards to Jacob Blake, we're going to be putting resources on how you can learn more, how you can do more for that in the description. Also, a very good friend of the show, KJ Dawson, is going to be releasing an album. I think by the time this comes out, it'll be tomorrow. It'll be August 30th. His new album, Who We Are on the Other Side, comes out. And I think we're also doing a live event Thursday night for like a little album preview. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be on Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere you get music. And make sure to subscribe, leave a little comment. And I think that's everything. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much, Shishki Productions, for being on. Goodbye, everybody.